Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Education USA's Saturday webinars in India. Thank you for joining us. Today's session is on developing a competitive PhD application for study in the US. Before I introduce today's speakers, I would like to share some information about who we are and what we do. Education USA is a US Department of State supported body, and our mandate is to provide accurate, current, and comprehensive information to students who are looking to pursue higher studies in the US. We have 7 advising centers in India and over 400 worldwide. For more information, please visit educationusa.state.gov. In our efforts to reach more students, we conduct virtual information twice a month on Saturday at 10 a.m. We invite you and your friends to join us for these sessions where you can learn more about the different aspects of higher study in the US. At this point, I'm going to ask all the participants to type into the chat box if you have any technical issues, and I will respond and try to help you deal with them. At the end of the session, we will have question and answer session, so I request that you keep your questions till the end. For today's session, our speaker is Dr. Douglas Hartman, who is a professor of technology and human learning at Michigan State University. We are ready to begin. Dr. Hartman, the floor is all yours.
Thank you and good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you and to be able to talk about how you can develop a competitive PhD application. I'm a faculty member at Michigan State University, and the university itself is located here on this map. You'll see the state highlighted in green with a little symbol on it indicating the location of where I am in the state of Michigan. I know that many of you are coming from locations across the country of India. I welcome you to the webinar. And wherever you are, I wish you well in your search for a PhD program that's a good fit for you. I'll tell you a little bit about my background and the experience I bring to talking about how you can develop a competitive PhD application. I've spent about 30 years reviewing PhD applications as a faculty member. And I've also spent that same amount of time mentoring PhD students in the social sciences. For about the last 20 years, I've been speaking to PhD students about how they can develop and strengthen the applications that they submit to doctoral programs. During that time, I've been a researcher and a teacher at 3 universities where I've worked with doctoral students. Each of those universities has provided me with a set of experiences, a broad set of experiences about what it takes to develop and prepare a very strong PhD application. And I've also been a visiting faculty member at 2 universities, one in New York City at Columbia University and their Teachers College, and also at California State University, Berkeley. It's across this broad range of experiences over quite a bit of time that I've been able to think about what it means to develop a very competitive PhD application. I'll talk about that a little bit this morning with you. I've imagined the PhD application based on my experience as part of a set of phases, 5 phases, which I'll talk about this morning. For many people, they start their application work and focus largely on what I'll call as a 4th phase of the process, the application work to be done. But the point I'll make this morning is that there are several phases that precede that are really groundwork. And that groundwork really helps you prepare and have something important to say in the actual application work. So starting at the left this morning, I'll look at the personal work that I think needs to be done to go into a strong application. Second, the professional work. Third, some university work where you do some background research. And then finally getting to that application work where you're filling in either a PDF file or some text box online. And then finally, the interview work, how to prepare for that. So while there are 5 phases to this process, this morning I'm going to probably talk at length about the first 3 phases that I think are really essential for developing that strong and competitive application. In general, my advice is to start the PhD application process early. Number of websites online that I've seen indicate that you should start 6 to 8 months before the deadline, and some others give a bit longer. My recommendation is, if at all possible, to start a year in advance. And that will give you the opportunity to work through these 5 phases that I'm proposing, that I think produce the most competitive PhD application. But if you don't have that much time, there are some short steps you can take, some shortcuts that I think will still be helpful. So let's get started. Let's start by looking at that first phase, the personal work. The question to ask yourself when doing the personal work phase of the process is, how do I approach work and life myself? Let me say a little bit about each of those. The first is, how do I approach work? The short answer to that question is to see the work that you'll be doing as a calling. By that, I need to provide a little bit of background knowledge. The research is pretty clear that most people see the work that they'll be doing in their doctoral studies and beyond as either a job, as a career, or as a calling. For those who see their doctoral work as a job and the position beyond as a simple source of income, that they earn the money and then they enjoy that money elsewhere outside of the work that they're doing. Others see it as a career, that I'll get this PhD and it's a nice way to advance myself and maybe gain some status. The third way is to see the PhD work and beyond as a calling. And by that, I mean that this is a way of life. This is my identity. This is what I really want. And this is me. This is who I'm going to become, and it's my mission. What's important about these 3 ways of approaching work is that this third way, the calling, is emblematic of those who have the most success in PhD work. They don't see it as a job or a career advancer, but they see it as, this is me. This is what I'm really meant to do in life, and it's my mission. So as you think about going into doctoral study, you want to do a self-check and see, how am I viewing not only my PhD work, but the work beyond? And if you see it as a calling, a way of life, you're more likely to find a good fit and be successful in heading this direction. Another thing to ask yourself is, how do I not only approach work, but how do I approach life? And I won't say much more about this other than to say there's a great book that's available. It was called Designing Your Life. It was written by 2 faculty at Stanford University. And if you get a chance to take a look at this, they lead you through a process of thinking about how to best orient yourself to life and thinking about higher ed and a career beyond. They point out a number of things in the book that are helpful. A couple that I'll mention are, it's really beneficial when you go into doctoral work to see yourself as somebody who has a bias for action. By that I mean you're a kind of experimenter. You're somebody who tests things out. You like to build your way forward, and you have a growth mindset. See yourself as really developing and moving forward. They also talk in the book about those people who really do well moving on into graduate studies, those who see their life as an odyssey, as a kind of adventure, and they see possible futures and imagine them. And they have the kind of flexibility in their thinking cognitively to develop and grow. So I won't say much more about personal work other than to say there's some things there, seeing life as a calling and seeing work as a design process that are really beneficial. And with those mindsets, the application process that you'll be doing can really be strengthened and be made more competitive. The second phase in the process, as you'll see on the screen, I call professional work. And by that, I mean asking this question: how should I prepare myself for the PhD application process? The answer to that, the short answer, is to begin to think and act like a professor right now, in advance, not waiting till you're in grad school, but to adopt a certain kind of mindset right now. I'll talk through this table here, giving some examples. These are the kinds of things that I think, if done in advance, really make you stand out and competitive when you actually go to fill out the application materials. And I'll start on the far left with research. Most professors who will be reviewing your application are engaged in research work. And so one of the things that will make you stand out is if you have already begun making some simple steps or initial moves toward doing some research. Even though you're not a full-fledged scholar yet, there's some actions you can take that suggest you're beginning to try this out, to test the field, and to see if it's a good fit for you. The first bullet point I have here is it's worthy to join a professional organization. Regardless of what field you'll be moving into for your PhD studies, doing some homework to find out which association you could belong to in that profession and that has a student membership benefit, usually at a lower cost, will help set you apart as somebody who's already engaging in the field. The second bit of professional work listed here is to begin to look for and look through the research journals that are available in the field so that you know where people are publishing. And you may mention this in your application later, or it may come up in an interview that you eventually have if they see you as someone as a likely candidate to enter into their program. So becoming aware early on of where people are sharing the scholarship that they're doing will help prepare you and begin to think and live like a professor does. If you have an opportunity to join a research team as a volunteer, you may only do some small part of a larger study, that would be beneficial. But if that's not possible to join a team, even doing some simple research on your own, conducting a small scale study, a case study, maybe as part of your master's or undergraduate work, will again help set you apart and give you something to say in the application that'll make your application more competitive. If you do join a research team or conduct your own small study, if you can present that at a conference, that can give you an advantage. Or if you can shadow a professor for a day or part of a day, just to see what they do, to learn about their work, get to know them a little bit. That's something that you may be able to mention in the application. And finally, in terms of research, if you're able to write a grant proposal, it doesn't have to be for a great deal of money, but just indicating that you're already in your thinking and in your actions, you're beginning to do some things that move you in the direction of what doctoral studies will require, and especially life beyond the doctoral studies. So research is the first part of professional work. that you'll want to take some time, if you have a full year in advance of the deadline, to try and do some of these types of things that show that you're already moving in this direction. Because the faculty that sit around the table and look at your application materials will want to know, is this a person that we want to invest time and some resources into? And if you can show them that you've already begun taking some small steps, they don't have to be grand steps, they'll likely to look more favorably on your application. Secondly, teaching, the middle category here, in terms of professional work, if you can observe a course or a seminar and talk with who's ever teaching it to get an idea of the behind the scenes work that goes into the preparation of a course, or tutor students in the subject or discipline in which you'll be going. If you can in some way assist with a course, whether it's face-to-face or online, that can be viewed as a valuable experience. Better yet is teaching the course. You're having full responsibility from the very beginning all the way through submitting the grades at the end, or doing some kind of mentoring on campus or at some summer camp, or assisting with the planning of a larger, something beyond a course, but the entire curriculum of a program. So some kind of teaching experience is looked at favorably by those who review PhD applications. And finally, the area of service. What are ways in which you're already thinking about yourself as a kind of servant, somebody who provides time and expertise to the profession that you'll be going into? You could interview a leader of some organization, a professional organization of your field, to learn about the service opportunities that are available. Beyond an interview, you could actually do some serving on a committee. In many universities and professional organizations, there are student representatives on committees. And if you can do that before you apply for your PhD, that shows that you're someone who is ready to serve and understands that that's an expectation. You could volunteer for a local or regional or even a national conference that's in your potential field of study. A little more advanced would be to review some proposals for a conference, or with a faculty member, co-review a journal article. I've done this with some people who've been thinking about doctoral study. So they see the inside process of how an article gets reviewed for a journal. Or more involved yet is to run for some student leadership role that's related to the profession you want to go into. So these are all ideas here on the screen right at the moment. You don't have to do them all, but I hope they suggest things that you want to consider possibly doing, so that when you go to actually fill out your application, faculty reviewing it will see that this is somebody who's already on the road moving in the direction of our profession, and that they'll look more favorably at that and see your application as more competitive. I suggest these three areas of research, teaching, and service because most faculty are evaluated each year on in these three areas. And so a lot of their thinking already is organized around research, teaching, and service. And when they almost intuitively sit down to read PhD applications, they're thinking along these lines, whether it's conscious or not. So those are ideas about professional work. Move next to university work. By this I mean work that really helps you understand a PhD program better. How should you go about finding it? And in essence, the short answer to that question is you want to find a PhD program that's a good fit for you. And to do that, you need to do some background research to find that fit. And it's that last word in the sentence on the screen now that I think is the most key word when you do university work, and that is finding the right fit. Some synonyms for that are, how do you find a good match, or a place that's suitable or that resonates or is highly compatible with who you are as a person, as a professional. So the prior two phases that I've talked about are really important when you come to this third phase, the university work. If you're going to find a good fit, you have to have thought about yourself and your life and your professional interests so that you can find that good match, that compatibility program. So how do you do that? How do you find fit? What's a good way to pursue that research? There, as the screen shows, there are a number of sites that rank institutions. And I'm just showing one here as an example. You'll want to look at several websites that rank institutions to find sort of the best PhD programs in your area. And many people pay attention just to the very top schools, those that are listed maybe 1 through 10. My encouragement is to think more broadly, because your best search, your best university work is to find the best fit for you. And knowing yourself and knowing about the program, you want to find a kind of match. And the best fit for you may not be that number 1 or 2 or 3 school. It may be as well, but it may not. And as you'll see in just a moment, sometimes the school that's ranked the highest may have the best ranking, but there may be some minuses to it when it comes to you and your goals and who you are and what you'd like to become in this field of work. I picked a couple of examples to illustrate this. So if we did a search here and looked at graduate programs, let's say in engineering, the top 3 schools this year are Massachusetts, Stanford, and Cal Berkeley. Those are definitely really great schools, and great PhD programs. It may turn out, though, that they may not be the strongest programs in the specific area of engineering that you're interested in. And so if you look at this site online, you'll want to come down to this area here where it says all specialties. If you click on that, you'll get a menu that shows you the sub-specialty areas within engineering. And that's where you want to find, for the area of engineering you want to go into, which schools are ranked the best. And I'd say maybe the top 30 or 40, maybe 50 schools. You want to look at those to see where the best fit is. And if we do that, let's say we pick the engineering specialty area. Here it's in industrial and manufacturing engineering. You'll see that the top schools in that area on the right are not Massachusetts, Stanford, and Cal Berkeley. They're Georgia, University of Michigan, and Northwestern. And so seeing that this might be a better fit with these 3 institutions and those that are ranked down lower is helpful information. It's good work about universities that can help you find that better fit. I'll pick one other field that's in the social sciences. I do work in this area. The best schools of education, according to this year's rankings, are Harvard, Pennsylvania, and Stanford. But within education, there are many sub areas, just as there are in engineering. And you'll see that if you wanted to do educational research on kids who are older adolescents, that the top schools are Michigan State, Teachers College, and Michigan. So knowing this will help you find a better fit, one that will be more meaningful and beneficial for you. And so that's all I'll say about university work, other than that you want to develop a list of these good fit universities after you've looked at a number of ranking sites. And as you list them, it's not necessary to rank them in order, just to have the names of the PhD programs. And you want to think about some things you want to do to even learn more about these programs that look like they'll be a good fit. And I'll just mention these briefly. I encourage you to talk with current and former PhD students. Use your resources online, find ways to reach out to people. If you really need to, you can simply call and talk to the department staff in the PhD program and give them your name and email address, and they can pass it on to current and former students. Many are willing to do that. You could follow faculty and PhD on social media. This will give you some idea of what they're doing, what they're up to these days. You could maybe talk with a faculty member, email them and reach out to them. Some programs ask that you not do this, and you want to respect that if that's the case. The field I'm in, we actively encourage it. In fact, if someone contacts me and says, I'd like to think about your PhD program, I'm glad to talk with them, and I'll suggest people at other universities that they might want to talk to. Because my main interest is in helping them find a good fit. And if it turns out that it's not at the university I'm at, I want to put them in contact with people who will help do that. I would read faculty members' research in that PhD program, so you see the kinds of topics and methods they're using in their research. And you want to really study the website and the biographies so you have a working knowledge. I can tell you that one of the turnoffs for many faculty is someone who has not taken a look at the kind of research and the topics and the teaching that faculty members do in their program. So you want to make sure you have that knowledge in mind. And you really want to find out the culture of the PhD program. What's it like to be there as a student? And you may find through your university work here that a place is really the kind of culture that you want to be a part of. And if so, that's a better fit for you. There are also some things to note. These are things I've picked up and heard faculty say over the years. I think these are good questions to ask yourself and maybe some of the people you talk to in the program. Do the faculty members publish with their PhD students? Of course, as someone going into a PhD program, you want that opportunity. So you want to find out in advance if they have a history of doing that. Secondly, do the faculty co-present with their PhD students? And as a doctoral student, you want that collaboration, that opportunity to learn from them and work elbow to elbow. Are there seminars in the department that are held on a regular basis? Because these are valuable learning opportunities outside of courses. And you want to have, again, that rich opportunity. The faculty also publish with former students. And this has become increasingly important in today's competitive environment beyond your PhD. Will your advisor support you by publishing with you if your field requires that? And you want to look at where some former PhD students in this program are today, what kind of assistantships they provide to PhD students, and what are some of the milestones or requirements that you need to do as you move through the program. So these are questions you want to ask both yourself and some of the people you talk to as you do your professional work. So relatively quickly, I moved through these first three phases: the personal work, the professional work, and the university work. But in my view, those are the areas to invest a good amount of effort. And if you do, when you get to the fourth phase here, the application work highlighted in yellow, you'll have some pretty significant things to say in your application. You will have really thought about sort of who you are, what your mission or your calling is. You will have thought about what it means to do the kind of work in the PhD program and beyond, and begun to do some thinking about research, teaching, and service as a lens for professional work. And you will have looked really at their university program in particular and seen whether it's a good fit. So I'm going to say a couple things about the application work here. There are many websites online that talk about this, and so part of the reason I'll spend less time on it is because there already is much available online through self-help websites. But basically the question I think to ask here is, how should I actually go about preparing my PhD application? And my basic point is if you've done all the work in the previous 3 phases that you can possibly do, that you'll be in a good place to essentially market yourself. You're going to sell yourself through the application process. Put your best foot forward in the things that you say. Typically, the application work involves going through a kind of checklist. Have I developed the curriculum vitae, personal statement, and so on? I'm going to pick out 2 of these and just say a couple of things about them. The first is the personal statement. And when it comes to the personal statement, that's a place where you really want to showcase the professional work that you've done. That was phase 2 that I talked about a little bit ago. And you want to explain how the professional work you've done in research, teaching, and service has begun to prepare you for PhD study. You want to show them that you have a little jump start already, that you won't be coming into the PhD program as a true beginner, but as somebody who's already begun to do this. And also in your personal statement, in the field that I work in, and in many other PhD programs as well, it's helpful to say something about who might be a possible advisor, who might be the faculty member or faculty members that would be a good fit for you. So if you've done your homework, you can just mention this in a sentence, who it is and why they might be a good fit. That you've looked at several of their articles and journals, heard them speak at a conference, or so on. So those are just a few minor tips about the application, the personal statement and the application work. The other part of the checklist I want to mention has to do with the reference letters. And you want to make sure for your PhD application that these are really written by people who've been academic mentors, people who can speak about your potential as an academic. Sometimes people have included more personal references or more job related, but really you want somebody who can speak from a university setting about you and doing academic work. And those are the strongest letters. So you want to think through your your network of people and think, who are those people that have been academic mentors to me? And if that list is pretty short or doesn't exist, then you want to take the time to develop those relationships with people who can speak from an academic position. You want to mention to your reference people that you want them to say things about your academic abilities and potential, because that's what really the professors reviewing your application are looking for. You want each of these letters to be tailored to the specific PhD program. Sometimes we'll even see letters where they've named another university that you're applying to in the reference letter, and that's a little bit embarrassing. It's something you don't have control over, but you want to encourage your reference writers to tailor the letters for each specific program if they can do so. And you also finally want them to explain briefly in your reference letter sort of your suitability for admission. Why are you a good fit? Each of these 4 points here mean that you want to send to your reference letter writers a little note that just kind of says, here's some things that will be helpful to say in my letter of recommendation. And these kind of bullet points here will be helpful. And I know I appreciate it when someone asks me to write a reference letter and they give me a little bit of guidance as to how I can best help them put their best foot forward. Oh, so we've gone through 4 phases, and let's say that you've done all the work and you submitted your application and you get an email or a call that says, we'd love to interview you. You want to pat yourself on the back when that happens, because you found a place that's a potentially good fit and they want to talk with you further. They've looked at all your materials and they want to get to know you in a more interactive way. So they're setting up the interview. There are many great tips online to help prepare for this. My view on how you should approach the application interview is simply to approach it like it's a conversation, that you're just sitting down with someone to find out about them and have them find out about you. So see it as a conversation. Some tips here. You want to anticipate questions that you could be asked. And again, if you just simply search online, you'll find some good starter questions to anticipate. But along with that, you want to prepare questions that you'd like to ask them, because in this conversation, you want to find out more about their program, about the people, about the requirements, and so on. And it may turn out that you discover, hey, this is indeed a great fit for me, or you may just determine otherwise. And so having those questions will help you understand that program and the people in it better. You really want to study the materials that are online. Look through the web pages, know who the faculty are, the areas of interest that they have, and please rehearse and practice a little bit so that you kind of feel natural in this conversation. I know it sounds odd to say prepare for a conversation, but some good thinking things through can go a long way, so that you have some key things you want to say right on the tip of your tongue and set to go. And finally, you want to put as much work into the interview preparation as you did into the application materials that you submit. I've gotten the sense sometimes in these Skype interviews, or WhatsApp sometimes is used, that somebody just didn't really think to prepare much for the interview process, and it shows. And so you want to spend some time really investing in getting ready for this. So those are the 5 phases. I know I've moved through them fairly quickly. There's more that could be said about each of them, and I could say more about that in the question and answer time. But I hope this gives you a framework for thinking about how best to prepare that competitive, highly competitive application for doctoral study. I do have some final thoughts about this, and the way I'd like to frame these final thoughts about the process is to speak about the university that I'm at. Education USA often says, just say a few words about your institution and the PhD programs that are available. So I'll take this moment just to say a few words here. I'm at Michigan State University, as I mentioned at the outset, and we're a member of an organization called the Association of American Universities. And what that means is that in the US, there are 60 universities, 60 top universities that belong to this association. And these universities have a focus on research primarily. We do good teaching and we provide service to the nation and the world, but our focus is largely on research. Michigan State is also what's called a land grant university. So our university belongs to another association, and this really means that the research we do is focused on helping people, helping develop people. And so it's very practical for the most part. Our PhD programs have a kind of practical slant or bias to them. And we think that's good, that we're not just doing research for the sake of doing it, but for the betterment of humankind. At Michigan State, we have a little over 50,000 students, so we're one of the larger universities in the country. Students come from 141 countries, and we're right smack in the middle of Michigan, so it's easy to get to Chicago and Detroit and Indianapolis and Cincinnati and Cleveland. So there are other big cities close by. And we have 118 PhD programs on campus. So, for many specialty areas, there are a number of choices at our institution. These are too numerous to list, all these PhD programs. This is just a small sample taken from the website. But I'll say something a little bit about the PhD program I'm in educational research, where we study teaching and learning. We're a very strong educational research program. You can see here in the center that for the last 25 years, we've been ranked #1 in the US in our area of specialty. And we have some other programs listed here that are also quite strong as well. So as long as the rankings have been available, we've been ranked the #1 in our specialty area. So we think we have some great faculty and fellow doctoral students for those who might be thinking about this area of the social sciences. We're also ranked highly in the world rankings. You'll see here the recent 2019 that Michigan State ranked #1 in education overall. And so, rankings change from year to year. Universities bump up and down, but consistently we've been able to do well. And while that doesn't make us a perfect place, we think it's a strong place to consider whether there's a possible fit. And we try and be very clear about our program in educational research. And you'll see here, starting with year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, what are the requirements? And we list those out so people can look at it and see, is this a place that'll have a good fit for the goals that I have? And we try and help people publish. You'll see that each year we have a publication expectation. We want to have them present at conferences with faculty and fellow grad students, and we encourage them to develop some experiences along the way. If you want to know more about Michigan State, these slides will be made available to you, and here's some links that have to do with fees, financial aid, and how we support doctoral students. If you'd like to also talk with somebody who came from India and became a student at Michigan State, I encourage you to talk with one of our recent graduates, Rohit Mehta. He has generously volunteered to make himself available. You'll see his email address here at the bottom. And Rohit came and worked in the area of educational technology. And he's now a new faculty member. Got a great job in California at one of their top universities. And so you could shoot him an email if you have a follow-up question that I might not be able to answer, but you think he might be able to. Another thing to look at when you're considering a university is, do they have international student organizations? And at Michigan State, we have very strong Indian student organization. So immediately, when you're on the ground here, there'll be a place to connect if you choose to do so. This is their website, and they also have a Facebook page that you might find of interest. It's a great way to reach out and connect with people and maybe learn a little bit more about the culture of the campus and this part of the country in the US. So it's time for questions. I look forward to interacting a bit with you and hearing about some of the things you're thinking. So in the webinar, there is an option, a place where you can enter questions, and I'm looking for that myself. I don't know why that disappeared on my screen. Maybe so Deborah or Aditi?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation for this session. If you're not able to find the questions, I can start reading questions one by one.
Yes, if you could.
The first question is, I did a UK honors degree where I earned second upper class in computing. My university does not publish GPA. Online translation revealed that my GPA is so and so. How does this impact my overall application?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, there's an echo I'm hearing and it's a little bit hard to hear you.
Sure. So the question is, I did a UK honors degree where I earned second upper class in computing. My university does not publish GPA. How does this impact my overall application?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the echo is still there and I'm not able to hear clearly what you're asking.
Okay, so 1 second. I'm going to You can view the question in the chat box, Dr. Ahmed.
Yeah, I'm looking for some reason on my screen, the chat box disappeared. I'm looking for how to make it reappear.
Is the echo still, are you able to hear me better now?
No, I'm still not able to see it. I'm very sorry about that.
That's okay.
If, I don't know, do you have a second computer that's on that could
Douglas,
be
could you look at the
causing?
chat? And oh, you're unable to access the webinar, is it? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So there's no echo with my voice, right?
No, there's no echo. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll read the question out. It says, I did a UK honors degree where I earned a second upper class, 62%, in computing. My university does not publish GPA. Online translation revealed that my GPA was around 3.5 to 3.7. How does this impact my overall application?
So certainly GPA is one of the variables that are considered as faculty review applications. It's not the only thing that's considered. If you can have your institution provide some kind of certified document that may be separate from your actual transcript, but is stamped with approval, that it indicates the GPA that you mentioned, that may be acceptable. You'll want to check with each institution in the US to see how they would like that information communicated to them. Your GPA, as I mentioned, though, is one variable considered. Most PhD programs evaluate applications holistically, and so your GPA would be not the only thing considered, but one of several considered in the review of your application. And to the extent you can get that verified and provided to the university program in the way they want it, that'll complete that requirement for your application.
All right, the next question is, what was the international student acceptance statistics for this fall 2019?
Can you repeat that one more time again? The audio, for some reason,
What
on
was
my end.
What was the international student acceptance statistics for this fall 2019?
So in terms of, I think they're asking for the percentage of students that are admitted. Each PhD program makes its own decisions about who they would like to admit. So there is no standard for a university or for all universities in the US, a percentage. Rather, it's up to each individual program to make those decisions. In the program I'm a part of, to give you an example, in the social sciences, there are no set percentages for each year for where applicants come from. We simply look at who are the best qualified and experienced people to come into our program. And one year there may be, that may mean 10% of the students are international, and the next year that may be 50% are international. So it can vary considerably from one year to the next. And our main interest is, given the limited number of positions we have for PhD students, where can we make the best investment in preparing people for their future? And where they come from is less important than that they have strong academic skills already and the potential to become even stronger.
I have a question from someone from Iran. He or she has graduated from applied mathematics in numerical analysis. They ask, is there any chance for us, especially considering the severe sanction imposed by the US government against Iran, are they effective?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I'm qualified to fully answer that, but it's a question that you could address directly to a program that looks like it might be a good fit for you. So in advance, you could find maybe those 10 or 15 or 20 programs that look like they're potential fits for you, and begin reaching out to a few of them to see how they would answer the question. Also, in addition to the PhD program, you can check with the international office at the universities that you're interested in and see what they say. They may have a bit more background and experience in addressing the particular question you're answering. Even though at the moment it may look like it's not possible, things may change. Sometimes in a short period of time. So doing your preparation work, those first 3 phases now, will benefit you for when the political situation changes at some point in the future. Good question.
Is there a PhD program in computer science at Michigan State University?
Yes, there is. And it's a good one. I think if you do the university work, you'll find out a bit more about it and learn about the faculty and the students and see who there might be a potential good fit for you to work with. So that's what I would encourage you to take a look at Michigan State. And using some of the ranking systems can help you see where it fits in the overall picture. The rankings themselves sometimes don't give a complete picture. They're looking at certain criteria and variables. And so looking broadly will advantage you, and certainly seeing what Michigan State has, I think will do so.
The next question is also from Iran. Someone is completing a psychology BA in the US. He says, I have heard that admission into psychology PhD programs is nearly impossible for international students due to funding and financial support issues. Is this accurate? If so, are there ways to increase my chances of admission into psychology programs?
Yeah, I don't know if any kind of data is kept on the likelihood of getting into psychology or any other area. There are certainly stories or people's experiences. My recommendation is to have a bias for action and to test it out yourself and see what is it that I'm going to find out about the likelihood. Relying on other stories may not be the path that's right for you. And so by doing the first 3 phases that I talked about today, you'll begin to learn about these programs and see how competitive it is to get into a certain PhD program. And in fact, are the number of assistantships and the financial support a factor that would permit me to enter a program or not? So that bias for action, I think, is really critical, and for you to go out and test the waters yourself and see what's there, and because funding often changes within universities from year to year, and so what might be a tight budget one year may be a very different budget the next year or several years later. And so making use of stories that other people have from past years might not be a good representation of the present year in which you would be applying. So my advice is to really just, if this is your calling, you found out that this is sort of your mission, you want to move in this direction in life and become, have this academic degree to do the kind of work you'd like to do, is to go for it and see what you can make of it yourself.
Another question asks, what are the chances of getting into a PhD without research publications and teaching experience?
Well, I think it's still possible. I don't think PhD programs expect that someone has published already. There may be a few that do that, but I think most don't. But having some kind of research experience, even if that's very limited, is looked on favorably. They see someone who is out trying things out. They're testing themselves to see indeed if this is their calling in the direction they want to move in their life. So a publication per se isn't required, but some kind of research experience is looked on favorably. When it comes to teaching, I would say the same is true. Whatever kinds of teaching-like experiences you can get wherever you are, whatever situation you're in, I think will be valuable. Part of PhD study is, in fact, developing your research, teaching, and service much more fully. And so the expectation is that you have arrived at doing these well when you first enter the program, but that you at least have taken some initial steps, and that in the program itself, then you'll have more opportunities to develop these more fully.
Is it better to go to a public university or to a private one, since funding is a huge factor? This is with relevance to a PhD in biological sciences.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It really varies from PhD program to PhD program. Some public universities have quite a bit of funding for PhD study, and some don't. They don't have much at all. Some private universities have quite a bit of funding for PhD students, and some don't. So there's no uniform answer. Each institution has its own sort of budget, if you will, and each doctoral program has its own constraints and opportunities financially. So you want to check into those things as much as you can and find out what's available. The PhD programs that I'm a part of, and I'm a part of 2 PhD programs, I have a joint appointment faculty member. We provide full funding for those that we admit into the program. We'll give them 5 years of funding. That includes, for coursework, for food, for housing, and so on. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough to get by in doctoral studies. And so we have a kind of generous budget in that way to support doctoral studies, and we're a state school, a public one. But I know other public universities that aren't able to do that. And so you just have to check out each program and see what they're able to do.
How would a switch in discipline be regarded? I think in this specific case, it's not a very far switch. It is from a pharmacy master's to an epidemiology in PhD. How would that, what is your perspective on that kind of switch?
Well, again, that's going to depend on particular programs. Again, I can talk out of my own experience on this. In the social sciences, the universities I've been at have been fairly flexible in people making switches. And so you'll want to ask about that. I would do that right up front, say, here's where I am, here's what I'm thinking, or here are reasons why this switch seems to make sense. You might even state that in your personal statement. So you're providing people with a kind of rationale and context for why you might be making this move. And if the program sees that as a logical one and a wise one, I don't see why they wouldn't consider you strongly as a potential candidate. Really, I think faculty in general, universities are interested in helping people find the best fit. I keep coming back to that word, but if someone comes into a program, and I recognize one of the programs I'm in, and I recognize early on that it's really just not a good fit for them, that they would be better positioned in a different program or college in the university, I'll have a conversation with them and do my best to support them in that kind of a transition. Because in the end, it doesn't help them or myself for them to continue in the paths that they're currently in if it's not a good fit. And so those kind of conversations are important to have. And that might sound a little strange or foreign, but our educational system is it's fairly open, and we're really interested in helping people find a calling, their kind of mission, and to the extent helping others move around and do that, we want to be able to support that.
Another question is on applying to an MS and a PhD program simultaneously at the same department. Would doing that negatively impact the application? And if the student doesn't do that, if the applicant doesn't do that, would they be considered for the MS program if they are not accepted to the PhD?
That question, yeah, interestingly, it will vary considerably depending on the program that you apply to. One university might see that in a very favorable way, and another not so. So I would ask up front. I would just say, if I apply for both of these, will I be seen in a favorable way or not? And depending on sort of the inner workings of that PhD and master's program, you'll likely get a straightforward answer on that. So I would advise being right up front with that and ask about it, and ask each institution that looks like it might be a good fit for you.
All right, we'll just take two more questions as we're already over time. There are a lot of questions. I'm sorry we can't answer all of them, but two more. One is, could you please talk about emailing potential PhD supervisors? In the email, is it okay to ask them about funding, visiting student opportunities before the PhD starts, and possible collaborations with their own postdoc supervisors?
You could do that, yes. You could ask those in the email. My recommendation, though, is to keep the email on the shorter side and use it as a tool to set up a conversation. So most of the people I work with like to have some kind of interaction. This is before applying, and to use the email to say, I'm interested, I've learned about your work and your program. Could we set up a time to talk by Skype or WhatsApp or some other platform? And then in the conversation you have with the faculty member or the doctoral student, I would ask then about those types of things. It's a little easier to do it live than to begin typing out longer email messages. And because most of us are inundated with lots of email, it's helpful if the email's on the shorter side and just arranging the appointment to have the conversation. But I would encourage you to ask those questions during that conversation. I think that would be the appropriate time to do so.
And finally, the last question is advice on research proposals. What are professors looking for from the research proposal?
Well, I can speak more informed about that question, which is a good one. from the social sciences. My experience is that we want to see someone who has a general direction for the kind of research they would like to do. It's not likely that someone coming into a PhD program would know all the details of the field and because they haven't taken the coursework and done the really in-depth knowledge investigating into the literature. But if you have a general direction you want to move in for the research you're proposing, I think that's very good to indicate that. Even indicating that it's a general direction and that recognizing that you'll learn more once you're in the PhD program. Yeah, I think that's advisable to do. I think it's also honest. It says, really, I'm new to this, but I've done enough work to know this general direction makes sense for me. And you also give them the opportunity, the faculty reviewing applications, to say, you know, does this direction look like a good fit for us? If we admitted this person, could we advise them in depth and with integrity? Do we have people who know about this area? Because there's so many sub areas within these fields. And so by your pointing in that general direction of research, you're helping yourself and you're helping the faculty reviewing your application too.
All right, I think we will draw this webinar to a close now. Thank you so much, Douglas, for all your advice, for the detailed presentation, a very comprehensive presentation on approaching this right from our personal perspective to our professional work and our university search. And thank you everyone for participating, for attending, and for all these questions. If you need, we were not able to answer many of the questions due to time. Also, some of them are really specific. So I would suggest if you need to discuss your specific profile or you have further questions that were not answered, you can get in touch with me at the email address in the webinar email, and I will do my best to respond. We hope you have a good day ahead. Thank you once again, and do feel free to attend, to join us for more of these webinars. Goodbye.